Well, I want to begin today in this place by sharing with you some names. And these are some names of some very important people, some very influential people, some people that held a tremendous amount of authority and influence and power. And so when I say their names, I want to see if you recognize them. First guy I want to share with you is a guy named Tyche. Pretty powerful guy in his day. Have you ever heard of Tyche? What about Echo the mountain nymph? You ever heard of Echo the mountain nymph? He was a pretty famous guy, pretty important in his day. What about Nemesis? You ever heard of Nemesis? Again, incredible power, influence, and authority in his heyday. Heard any of these people? Well, no, most of you haven't, and to be honest with you, I haven't either. But who these individuals were, they were gods. They were gods. They were objects of people's worship and devotion and gifts and talents and finances, and every single one of them was worshiped by untold amounts of people on this mountain right behind me. And the place that I stand today is a place called Caesarea Philippi. And more specifically, this place, this mountain, this wall behind me is called the Gates of Hades. And what makes this place interesting is that for generations and millennia, this place that we stand on today was the center of pagan worship in the known world. People would come from all over the place, and they would come here to worship their God. They would come to this spot that we stand here today, and they would come and give the best of their time, the best of their devotion, the best of their finances to come and to make the name and the renown and the fame of their God known. This place is full of evidence of generations of worshipers coming to this place and ensuring that their God was known, exalted, and remembered. I guarantee you that when the worshipers and the followers of Echo the mountain nymph were here on this mountain carving his image and worshiping him in his heyday, I bet in their minds they thought, man, our God is the best. Our God, his name is going to last forever. People for generations are going to come to this place and worship Echo the mountain nymph. I guarantee you that the worshipers of Tyche, when they came here and they gave him the best of their hearts in worship, when they sang and offered sacrifices, I bet in those moments they thought, this is all worth it. So let me ask you a question. Was it worth it? Did the untold thousands of people that came to this spot to offer the best of themselves to their God, did they invest themselves into something that mattered? Did they invest their affections and their time and their talents into something that would last? Well, the answer obviously is no. Why? Because for most of the gods that are carved on the mountain behind me, you've never even heard of them. They've had no impact on your life. And even some of the gods and the men that were worshipped here that you have heard of, like Pan and Zeus and Herod the Great and Alexander the Great, have all ended up with the exact same fate. They held power and influence for a time, but have now been relegated to absolute insignificance. Again, myriads of people came to this very spot, and they invested themselves and gave themselves and their lives and their fortunes into kingdoms and powers and governments that no longer exist. When you think about that, every second of their worship, every dime that was invested ultimately was in vain. Why? They're no longer here. And it was to this very spot, this epicenter of pagan worship and power and influence in the ancient world, that Jesus would bring his disciples. And it was here, by this rock, that Jesus would ask the disciples one of the most important, if not the most important question of their lives. Jesus would look at his men standing here at the gates of Hades and all that it represented, and he would look at them and say, "Who do people say that I am? Men, what does the world say that I am? Who does your neighbor say that I am?" And they would look at him and they'd respond, basically, they'd say, "Jesus, the talk around town is that you're a prophet, that you're John the Baptist that's come back, or you're Elijah, or you're Jeremiah, that you're just the prophet that's going to come and going to go." But then Jesus looked at them and asked them, again, maybe the most important question that would ever be asked of them. He said, "Men, who do you say that I am?" And it was Peter who first responded. And for once, when Peter opened his mouth, he got it right. He looked back at Jesus and he said, "Jesus, you are the Christ. You are the Son of the living God." And that statement right there is called Peter's confession. And Peter says two things there that are absolutely critical in the understanding and the embracing of Jesus' identity, who he was and why he mattered. He said two things about Jesus. The first thing that he said, "Jesus, you are the Christ." Now, the word Christ means anointed one. It means Messiah. The Jewish people, from the time they were little, from the pages of the Old Testament, from generations past, believe and have been told that there was coming a day when they would be visited by an anointed one of God, a Messiah. And this Messiah would come and would usher in a new kingdom, and this new kingdom would have no end. And Peter looked at Jesus and he said, "Jesus, I believe that you are him. I believe that you are the anointed one of God that is going to usher in a kingdom into this world that will never end and that will last forever." I want you to know why that's critical. I want you to think about and understand why that part of the confession is absolutely important for you, for me, that Peter made that statement, that he believed that we believe that Jesus is the Messiah, that he is the anointed one of God that will usher in a kingdom that will never end. To help us understand that, I want to tell you a story. When I was in Israel a while back, one of the coolest things that I got to do was I got to go over to a Jewish family's home on the Sabbath, and I got to share a Sabbath meal with them. They were an amazing family, an Orthodox Jewish family. They loved God. And as I ate dinner with them, we had the family that was there, and there was also with us one of their family friends, which was a professor. He was a professor of Old Testament. That's not what they call it. This is what we call it, but he was a professor of the Old Testament here in Israel, a devout Jew. And he encouraged me as we sat there to talk and to ask questions, and for me to ask him anything I wanted to ask him. This guy was amazing. He was probably in his 80s. He was just this cute old man. He had a funny accent. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Princess Bride, but you remember the Billy Crystal character in this, and please forgive me for this cheesy illustration, but you remember the Billy Crystal character in Princess Bride? He would talk like this: "He's not dead, he's mostly dead." But that's how this guy talked. And as we began to discuss the Bible and the Lord, I asked him a question. I said, "Professor, you know the Bible in and out. You know the scriptures backwards and forwards. You know the Old Testament. You know the prophecies. To me, as a Christian, as a follower of Christ, as I read the Old Testament, it so clearly points to Jesus." I asked him, "Professor, why do you not believe that Jesus was the Messiah? Why do you not believe that He was the anointed one of God?" And the professor responded without hesitation. He said, "Because He failed. He failed. He was a failed Messiah. He did not usher the kingdom to Israel. He did not bring power to Israel." Now, why would the professor say that? Because you see, the Jewish people then and even today are looking for a Messiah that is going to come and bring Israel to power. They were looking for a Messiah that was going to come and bring an earthly kingdom, and therefore the result, bring forth an earthly power and authority, somebody that would kick the Romans out and put them on the throne. But as you and I know, Jesus didn't come to establish an earthly kingdom that was built on earthly authority and power and a great military. Jesus came to establish a spiritual kingdom, an eternal kingdom that would never end. And so at that point in the conversation, I asked this sweet old professor a question that he didn't have an answer for. It was the only time in our conversation that after I asked him a question, he was silent. I said, "Professor, you say that Jesus is a failed Messiah." I said, "How many failed Messiahs have there been throughout the years?" He paused and he thought about it, and he said, "Hundreds. Too many to count." And I said, "Could you name me a few of them?" And he began to name a few of these failed messiahs, even the more famous failed messiahs throughout the centuries, and I'd never even heard of any of them. And I looked at him and I said, "Professor, if Jesus is just another failed Messiah, then how do you explain that this man arguably is the most influential human being to ever walk the face of the earth? If he's just another one of hundreds of failed messiahs, then why do people worship him all over the planet? Why, if he's just another failed messiah, 2,000 years later, is his church and his kingdom still thriving and growing if he's just another failed messiah?" And the professor didn't say anything. And then Peter gave the second part of his confession. He said, "Jesus, I believe you are the Christ." And then he said, "I believe that you are the Son of the living God." And that part of the confession is absolutely crucial. He said, "I believe you're the Son of the living God." His point was this. He's saying, "Jesus, we're here at Caesarea Philippi. We're here at the gates of Hades, and all these other gods are dead. But Jesus, I believe our God is alive. And Jesus, I believe that you are Him." And then Jesus looked at Peter with amazement. And he said, "Peter, you're right. You're absolutely right. He said, "Blessed are you, Peter, for flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but your Father who is in heaven revealed that to you." And again, that statement is so important. He's saying that this confession is so true. This confession is so right. This confession is so eternal. This confession is so significant that no man could have ever revealed that to you, Peter. Nobody could have convinced you of this. Peter, you're blessed because God has revealed this to you. And I just want to stop right there, Christian, pre-Christian, and I just want you to know that this confession is true, and the only way you'll ever believe it is if God opens your heart to believe it. He is the Christ, and He is the Son of the living God. And then Jesus said something that would have eternal significance and would hold in its hands eternal truth. He said, "Peter, upon this confession that I am the Christ, that I am the Son of the living God," He said, "Peter, on that rock I am going to build my church." And then He said, "And the gates of Hades will not overpower it." The gates of Hades will not prevail against it. Jesus' point to His disciples was not that He's going to build the church on this rock behind me. His point was not, and this is just obvious in the language of the New Testament here when you study it, His point was not that He was going to build the church upon the person of Peter. Jesus' point was, I am going to build a body. I am going to build an institution. I am going to build an establishment. I am going to build an entity, and it's going to be called the church. And I'm going to build it on people who make that confession, who believe that I am the Christ, I'm the Messiah, I am the Anointed One. I'm going to build my church on people who believe that I am the Son of the living God. And when that church is built, there is no entity that will ever overpower it. When all other entities, when all other institutions, when all other establishments have failed and are gone and no longer exist, the church will still be standing. And you know what? Jesus was right. Jesus made that statement right here 2,000 years ago. And I don't know if you've noticed, the Church of Jesus Christ is still here. Echo the Mountain Nymph? Never heard of him. The mighty and powerful Tyche? Never heard of him. Zeus? Most significant thing he's done over the last couple centuries was being a Disney cartoon. Herod the Great, Alexander the Great, they're dead. But Jesus Christ is alive, and His church is still thriving. And you know what? I believe Jesus' statement is absolutely true. It's been true for 2,000 years. And I believe with all my heart that if Jesus tarries and He doesn't come back, then 2,000 years from now, it will still be true. 2,000 years from now, the United States government will be gone, I promise you. Microsoft computers will be gone. Apple will be gone. Hollywood will be a distant memory. But I promise you that the Church of Jesus Christ will still be standing. The Bible will still be taught, and the gospel will still be proclaimed. And so I want to end today by having you consider this. You are investing your life today into something. you are giving the best of your time, the best of your energy, the best of your talents, the best of your finances to something. And the question is today, are you investing those things into something that matters? Are you investing those things and giving those things and giving the best of your worship into something that's going to last? Jesus said, upon this rock, this confession, I will build my church. I will establish a kingdom. And when all other kingdoms have faded away, this one will still stand. Jesus asked the question, who do you say that I am? I want you to know that that is the most important question you could ever be asked. And that is the most important answer you could ever give. Who is Jesus? Do you really believe that He is the Christ? Do you really believe that He is the Son of the living God? And the answer to that question will determine whether you invest your life into something that is eternal, into something that matters, into something that will last, or you are investing your life into a dying dream that's only going to be forgotten. And honestly, it's been convicting, because there's probably a lot of us here that realize today, you know what? In a lot of ways, I am wasting my life. In a lot of ways, I am investing so much of the best of who I am into nothing. And so our heart for you is that you don't leave this time discouraged today, but that you know that you can run to Jesus and that He will do a great and mighty work in you. And so I want you to know today that Jesus Christ wants to take you and capture your heart and pick you up and place you in and give you a role in the greatest story, the greatest journey, and the only thing that matters, in the only kingdom that's going to last.